3. Incentives. Develop some. Nothing helps a person remain tenacious like a good incentive. That's why so many companies use them with their employees. Walter Elliott said, "Perseverance is not a long race. It is of many short races, one after another." If you give yourself worthwhile incentives to win the short races, attaining a long-term goal seems less formidable. As you develop incentives for yourself, keep these things in mind. Reward yourself only after you reach the goal. Divide the progress into stages to multiply the rewards. Include others. That increases accountability and makes achievement more enjoyable. What you choose to use as incentives is up to you. But match the incentive to the goal. Just as a parent doesn't reward a child for finishing his vegetables with a trip to Disneyland, don't make rewards for the small objectives too big. Otherwise, you will undermine your desire to keep going. 4. Determination. Cultivate it. Author Napoleon Hill noted, "Effort only fully realizes its reward after a person refuses to quit." To develop persistence over the long haul, you have to cultivate inward determination on a continual basis. And if you do, someday your story may be similar to one of these. Admiral Peary attempted to reach the North Pole 7 times before he made it on try number 8. Oscar Hammerstein had 5 flap shows that lasted less than a combined total of 6 weeks before Oklahoma, which ran for 269 weeks and grossed $7 million. John Creasy received 743 rejection slips from publishers before one work was ever published. He eventually published 560 books, which have sold more than 60 million copies. Eddie Arcano lost 250 consecutive races before he won his first. Albert Einstein, Edgar Allan Poe, and John Shelley were all expelled from school for being mentally slow. Learn to become a determined individual. Inspire yourself with stories of people who tried, failed, and kept going. And remember, the only difference between a little shot and a big shot is that the big shot kept on shooting. A surprise at Christmas. I will always associate persistence with someone I got to know in San Diego. About 10 years ago, while I was the senior pastor of Skyline Church, I met him at a performance of our Christmas production. Those performances were always major events. Each year we did 24 performances over 3 weeks to audiences totaling more than 20,000 people. As I was backstage talking to some of the singers and actors before a performance, I heard them excitingly talking to one another. "Orville's here. Orville's in the audience," I could hear them saying. I thought, that was nice. Orville Butcher was the founding pastor of Skyline and I was glad to see the people were excited about putting on a good show for him. When I stepped out in front of the auditorium to welcome them to the performance, I spotted someone sitting in the front row that I recognized. He was a tall, thin man with wavy gray hair, glasses, suspenders, and a red bow tie. That's when I recognized they hadn't been talking about Orville Butcher. Like me, it was Orton Redenbacher and the audience. You'd never guessed from looking at him. Over the years, I got to know Orville Redenbacher. He was bright and cheerful, and just as he appeared on his television commercials. And he was generous, too. About twice a year, a truck would pull up to my house, and the men would unload boxes of popcorn for me and my family. A gift from Orville. Most people who saw Orville Redenbacher on television thought he was an actor portraying a businessman. He seemed so quirky that people assumed that his persona was a made-up character. Adweek described him as a wry caricature sprung from American Gothic, an owlish codger, with the deportment of a lifelong prom chaperone. But he was the genuine article. He personally developed the popcorn he sold, and how he did it is a study in persistence. Indiana farm boy. Redenbacher was born on a farm in Jackson Township, a few miles south of Brazil, Indiana, in 1907. At age 12, he started growing popcorn, in addition to his numerous chores. In time, his additional crop brought in $150 a month, most of which he set aside for college. In 1924, he graduated from high school, the first person in his family to reach that milestone. He received an appointment to West Point, but instead he went to Purdue. His ambition was to become a country agent. Times were tough, and coming from a farming family means that he didn't have much money. So Redenbacher worked hard and did lots of odd jobs for the university agriculture department, including some experiments with popcorn hybrids. Many times he considered quitting, but he always persevered. In a letter to his fiancée, he wrote why he hadn't given up. First, I always wanted my children to know I was a college graduate. Second, I was afraid people back home would think I couldn't meet my grades, or else got kicked out. And the third reason was because I told my folks that I was going to college. The first 2 summers, I went home, the full intention of quitting. But these other things got to working, and every fall found me back at Purdue. In 1928, he received his degree in agriculture. New opportunities. The first job Redenbacher took was a teacher, but the next year he became a country agent, a job he held until 1940 when he received an offer from the Princeton Mining Company to manage its newly acquired Princeton Farms. At 12,000 acres, it was the largest farm in Indiana. There, he again experimented with popcorn hybrids. For 10 years, Redenbacher managed Princeton's concerns, and was highly successful. But in 1950, he and his friend, Charlie Bowman, decided to go into business together, purchasing the George F. Chester and Son Seed Company. Once again, Redenbacher was highly successful, and again he spent lots of time developing his hybrid. To give you an idea of the magnitude of that task, read the words of his grandson, Gary Redenbacher. Grandpa was a tireless worker. The effort that was required to come up with the Gorman hybrid was enough work for anyone's lifetime. Those who have ever tried to hybridize rose or any other plant know that it's just a matter of dogged determination and time. I tell people to imagine that they are in a football stadium full of fans. Imagine that each fan is a stalk of corn. Your job is to go to each corn stalk in the stands and individually pollinate each one. But since the average football stadium only holds about 50,000 people, you'll need to do 3 stadiums before you pollinated any corn stalks as Grandpa did each year. Through all these tens of thousands of hybrids, Grandpa never lost sight of his goal, to produce a better popcorn. Success at last. Finally, in 1965, Redenbacher perfected his popcorn hybrid. He had a popcorn that outperformed every other variety in popping volume, poppability, and flavor. But his battle wasn't over. It took him another 10 years to make his popcorn the best-selling brand in the world. And that's when he and Charlie Bowman sold the brand to Hunt Wesson Foods. It would have been easy for Redenbacher to quit his quest for the perfect popcorn. He wasn't successful in marketing until he was 67 years old. But he had a dream and the determination to pursue it. And he wouldn't give up. When asked about his philosophy, he said, "I've followed the classic homespun principles. Never say die. Never be satisfied. Be stubborn. Be persistent. Integrity is a must. Anything worth having is worth striving for with all your might." Does it sound corny? Honestly, that's all there is to it. There is no magic formula. If you desire to succeed, realize that there's not much difference between success and failure. If you are willing to be doggedly persistent, you can be a success. Your 14th step to failing forward. Understand that there's not much difference between failure and success. Take time to write down your dream and the reason why you desire to fulfill it. Then write down all the things that you would be willing to go through to make it happen. Try to think of everything that could possibly go wrong as you pursue it. If you do that, you will be mentally prepared for problems to come, and that will help you to be more persistent. Steps to failing forward. 1. Realize that there is one major difference between average people and achieving people. 2. Learn a new definition of failure. 3. Remove the you from failure. 4. Take action and reduce your fear. 5. Change your response to failure by accepting responsibility. 6. Don't let failure from outside you get inside you. 7. Say goodbye to yesterday. 8. Change yourself and your world changes. 9. Get over yourself and start giving of yourself. 10. Find the benefit in every bad experience. 11. If at first you do succeed, try something harder. 12. Learn from a bad experience and make it a good experience. 13. Work on the weakness that weakens you. 14. Understand that there's not much difference between failure and success. 15. It's what you do after you get up that counts. Experience is not what happens to you. Experience is what you do with what happens to you. Aldous Huxley. You are probably familiar with this quote by President Calvin Coolidge. McDonald's founder Ray Kroc used to quote it. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. Well, I would have to disagree with that statement. Persistence is important, but it isn't the only key to success. I think you need persistence plus something more. It's just like the old saying about boxers. A champion gets up more times than he gets knocked down. Yet, if that's the only thing he does, he may finally win, but not before getting his brains beaten out. Who wants that? He's much better off if he needs to get up off the canvas only a few times. He does that by figuring out how to knock out his opponent. He didn't play games with success. That's what Milton Bradley did, in a matter of speaking. He figured out what to do so he wouldn't continue falling down. He started his career at age 20 as a draftsman. That was 1856. By 1860, he had earned enough money to buy a printing press and go into business for himself as a lithographer. His first great product idea was for a lithograph of newly elected President Abraham Lincoln. As soon as he offered the print for sale, the orders flooded in, and he would have kept making money except for one problem. His print was of a clean-shaven Lincoln, but the new president had a growny beard, and it nearly ruined Bradley. Well, he was trying to cope with his first major setback. He decided to try something different, a game. When he was a child, his parents had used games as tools to teach him and his siblings. He had a concept for a game he called the checkered game of life, which taught moral values. He designed the game and printed up copies. It was the first parlor game printed in the United States. The game sold well. In fact, as fast as they handmade games could produce, the customer snapped them up. And the first year, he sold 40,000 copies. A new focus and plan. That first success gave Bradley a new direction in life. He turned his attention to producing games and other materials that stimulated the mind and instructed people while entertaining them. Primarily, that meant games, but it wasn't long before he wanted to expand more intentionally into the educational resources. A new concept to America had come across the Atlantic Ocean from Germany called kindergarten. Bradley became very excited by it. Bradley saw the educational potential of kindergarten for children and the potential market for materials to teach them. He wanted to be the first person in America to print kindergarten materials in English. He wanted to produce building blocks, art supplies, and other items. He intended to make kindergarten materials his primary focus. But his business associates objected because the company was operating in an economic downturn. They believed that focusing such an attention in a risky new area might put the company out of business. Bradley was undeterred. He pushed forward with his plan, and he ultimately achieved remarkable success. "It took all the faith I could muster," said Bradley, "all the belief in the final triumph of kindergarten principles to pull me through those early years of discouragement, when my business associates and other friends and the annual balance sheets of our bookkeeper were all against me." In time, Bradley became one of kindergarten's chief proponents. He produced numerous materials and even published the influential journal Kindergarten Review. He made the difference in the lives of thousands and thousands of children. A plan for after you get back up. Maybe you have developed the persistence and resilience to keep getting up when you get knocked down. But you're getting weary of dragging yourself back onto your feet again without making any progress. You may be physically and emotionally exhausted. If so, you need to do more than just get back up. What you need is a plan that will help you determine what you need to do after you've gotten back up. Try using these steps based on the word forward. Finalize your goal. In the last chapter, I wrote about the importance of having purpose. and developing a desire. The next step is to set a definite goal in which you reach. The boxer in the ring who wants to get back up has this goal, knocking out his opponent. Milton Bradley had this goal, to produce educational products for kindergarten students. You need to determine what your goal is. Recognize this. The goal shapes the plan. The plan shapes the action. The action achieves the result. The result brings success. If you cannot finalize your goal, you won't be able to turn your failures into successes. George Matthew Adams asserts, "In this life we get only those things for which we hunt, for which we strive, and for which we are willing to sacrifice. It is better to aim for something you want, even though you miss it, than to get something that you didn't aim to get and which you don't want. If we look long enough for what we want in life, we are almost sure to find it, no matter what that objective may be." Order your plans. The saying is old. It was coined by Benjamin Franklin, but it's true. By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. There is no guarantee that what you plan will be carried out in the way you envision it. But if you neglect to plan, your chances of success are very slim. Novelist Victor Hugo believed, "He who every morning plans the transactions of the day and follows out that plan carries a thread that will guide him through the labyrinth of the most busy life. But where no plan is laid, where the disposal of time is surrendered merely to the chance of the incident, chaos will soon reign." That is undoubtedly why Spanish author Miguel de Cervantes wrote, "The man who is prepared has his battle half fought." Risk failure by taking action. Planning alone won't bring success. The other half of the battle is taking action. Conrad Hilton said, "Success seems to be connected with action. Successful people keep moving." Moving forward on a plan and actually doing it involves risk. And that's good because nothing of value is achieved without risk. You have to put yourself on the line to reach the finish line. Larry Osborne speaks of risk. "Highly successful leaders ignore conventional wisdom and take their chances. Their stories inevitably include a defining moment or a key decision when they took a significant risk and they experienced a breakthrough." Welcome mistakes. By now you realize that mistakes are not to be avoided, but embraced. They are signals that you're moving into new territory, breaking new ground, making progress. As the old English proverb states, he who makes no mistakes never makes anything. If you are still having a hard time with this concept, I recommend that you go back and review the previous chapters. The only way you will be able to feel forward is to accept mistakes as a part of life and learn from them and improve. Advanced based on your character. Every time you face mistakes and attempt to move forward in spite of them is a test of character. There always comes a time when giving up is easier than standing up. When giving in looks more attractive than digging in. In those moments, character may be the only thing you have to draw on to keep you going. Championship winning NBA coach Pat Riley said, "There comes a moment that defines winning from losing. The true warrior understands and seizes the moment by giving effort so intrusive and intrusive that it could be called one from the heart. After you've been knocked down and you've had the will to come back up, you will get the intelligence to plan your comeback and the courage to take action. Know this, you will never experience one of those defining moments, and it won't define you. As an achiever or a quitter, prepare for that moment, and it's coming, and you increase your chances for winning the way through it. Reevaluate your progress continually. By fighting through the difficult times and overcoming mistakes, you have the opportunity to learn and adjust. William Knudsen joked, "Experience is knowing a lot of things you shouldn't know." People don't like to examine their mistakes, yet that's what it takes to achieve. Katie Payne, president of De La Haye Media Link, says, "Business culture never teaches us to admit our mistakes, but to bury them instead, and or blame someone else. Most personnel don't read project reviews and don't do much to cover mistakes. If we wait until we finish the project to conduct post-mortem, people will forget the mistake, or they'll build up a grudge against the coworker. Either way, we learn and lose a earning opportunity. There comes a moment that defines winning from losing. The true warrior understands and seizes the moment by giving an effort so intensive and so intuitive that it could be called one from the heart." Pat Riley. Develop new strategies to succeed. Lester Thurlow points out that a competitive world has two possibilities for you. You can lose, or if you want to win, you can change. Once you develop a plan and put it into action, you're not finished. In fact, if you want to succeed, you're never finished. Success is the journey, the continual process, and no matter how hard you work, you will not create the perfect plan, nor execute it without error. You will never get to the point that you no longer make mistakes, that you no longer fail, but that's okay. Personal finance author and lecturer Robert Kiyosaki acknowledges, in my own life, I've noticed that winning usually follows losing. One of Kiyosaki's favorite stories comes from the teaching of his friend Mike's dad when he was growing up. He said that the man, whom he called Rich Dad, loved Texas and Texans. Rich Dad used to say, if you really want to learn the attitude of how to handle risk, losing and failure, go to San Antonio and visit the Alamo. The Alamo is a great story of brave people who chose to fight, knowing there was no hope of success against overwhelming odds. They chose to die instead of surrendering. It's an inspiring story worthy of study. Nonetheless, it's still a tragic military defeat. They got their butts kicked. A failure, if you will. They lost. So, how do Texans handle failure? They still shout, remember the Alamo. Kiyosaki adds, every time he was afraid of making a mistake or losing money, he told this story. Rich Dad knew that failure would only make him stronger and smarter. It gave him the courage to cross the line when others backed out. He said, that's why I like Texans so much. They took a great failure and turned it into a tourist destination that makes them millions. Failures are just milestones on the success journey. Each time you plan, risk, fail, reevaluate, and adjust, you have another opportunity to begin again. Only better than the last time. At 67 years old, Thomas Edison said, as his laboratory burned to the ground, thank goodness all our mistakes were burned up. Now we can start again fresh. A jewel of the Pacific. Starting over usually isn't easy, to say the least, but it sure can bring incredible results. I was reminded of that on a trip I took to Asia in the fall of 1999. For 10 days, a team of my leaders and I traveled to India, Hong Kong, Australia, Singapore, and the Philippines to teach leadership. My favorite stop on that trip was Singapore. It's incredible. It is the most modern country in the world. We took a tour of the city of Singapore, and our guide, Susanna Fu, told us that many things about our country. Its gross domestic product in 1998 was $84 billion, and it has a per capita gross national product of $22,800, ninth highest in the world. And Singapore accomplishes this in a country of only 238 square miles. That is about 1/5 the size of Rhode Island. Knocked down. Singapore started out as part of the Sumatran Sriwijaya Kingdom, but became part of the British Empire in 1826. For more than a century, it remained among Britain's holdings, interrupted by only a time of Japanese occupation during World War II. After the war, the British granted independence to more and more members of the former empire. The people of Singapore began to think about their own independence. The British were skeptical. Singapore had no natural resources and no experience in government. The people desired independence, but culturally, they still possessed a colonial mindset. And on top of that, racial prejudice was rampant. In 1959, Singapore was granted its independence, but the country didn't do well. That's when the people decided that their best hope was to attach themselves to Malaysia, which they did in 1963. But the Malaysians didn't get along well with the people of Singapore, and after 2 years, Malaysia severed ties with Singapore. The country's leader, Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew, felt that the country had been cast adrift, with few prospects and little hope. There was only one thing to do: work themselves out of their horrible situation, moving forward with a plan. Lee wrestled with the problem until he had a plan. He was a young leader, only 42 years old. Unlike most of his countrymen, he was educated. He knew that a turnaround was possible, but it would take a generation to do it. His goal was to create first world conditions in a third world country. And this is how he decided to do it. 1. Bring in industry. His first objective was to bring in industries that would employ many low-skilled workers so that the people would have jobs. 2. Create public housing. He wanted to improve the people's qualities of living and to inspire them. They would move into better housing, but they would pay for it. 3. Send people to school. The only way for the country to improve was for the people to improve themselves. He would make education affordable for everyone. 4. Set up a banking system. The goal was nothing short of making Singapore the financial center of Asia. 5. Encourage international travel. Singapore would become a business and tourist destination with a world-class airport. Lee's goal was lofty, and his plan was ambitious. It would take utter determination to achieve what he had dreamed, but even then, he would need help in accomplishing it. He turned to the United Nations for assistance, and through the organization was willing to help things did not go smoothly at first. Dr. Albert Winsemius, an industrial and economic advisor from the UN, visited the country and said it was bewildering. There were strikes about nothing. There was a riot every other day and everywhere. My first impression was anything but hopeful. But Lee and the people of Singapore persevered. First, they received hundreds of millions of dollars in loans from the World Bank. In the countries of England and Japan. Next, they brought in experts from around the world to help them, carefully selecting representatives from countries who led their fields. Japan and Germany. Technical advisors to set up factories. Sweden and Holland. Experts on banking and financing. Israel. Army advisors. New Zealand and Australia. Air Force and Naval advisors. Then they brought in 1,200 companies from the United States and Japan, including General Electric, IBM, Hewlett-Packard, Philips, Sony, Mitsubishi, Caterpillar, Texas Instruments, Mobil Oil, and others. Singapore's story is now her story. As our guide, Susanna Fu, told us about her country, she fought back the tears. She had been one of the struggling, uneducated people that the country had helped make a better life. As a teen in the 1960s, she had dropped out of high school, but as the country got on track, so did she. She went back to night school and improved herself. In her 50s, she understands the incredible distance she and her country have traveled. She has seen the city of Singapore go from a land of swamp and scrub to a flourishing international city. And she has seen the people go from ignorant, helpless, to rugged and disciplined groups of achievers. Singapore continues to change. The people continue to improve, and they focus a lot of their attention on giving something back. We're involved in Bosnia, Zimbabwe, Turkey, Vietnam, East Timor, and Kuwait, says Susanna. It is our turn to, and because we understand how great the need is, we're willing to go wherever the UN go. I'm not sure when I will get back to Singapore, but as I left, I realized I would not forget Susanna Fu, beautiful city. Because of all the countries I've ever been to, no place better exemplified what it means to fail forward. Your 15th step in failing forward. Get up, get over it, get going. Undoubtedly, some great tasks lie ahead of you. Maybe you suspect that accomplishing it is the key to your purpose, but you have been afraid to tackle it. Perhaps you'll be able to overcome the failure that could result from attempting it. Plan to do it. Don't jump into it frivolously. If you've tried and failed at it, then you probably wouldn't be frivolous. Get back up on your feet and use the strategies chapter and lean forward. It's what you do after you get back up that counts. Risk failing by taking action. Mistakes. Advance based on your. Reevaluate your progress continually. Develop new strategies to succeed. Break. Would you like to go on the adventure of a lifetime? Visit www.stormnavigator.biz and check in with a wicked tornado tour. Enter in the code in the comment section, get 30 and get $30 off a tornado tour. End break. If you're willing to stay determined, work according to a plan, and keep getting up when you get knocked down, you will be able to achieve your goals and someday your dreams. Steps to failing forward. Realize there's one major difference between average people and achieving people. 2. Learn a new definition of failure. 3. Remove the you from failure. 4. Take action and reduce your fear. 5. Change your response to failure by accepting responsibility. 6. Don't let the failure from outside you get inside you. 7. Say goodbye to yesterday. 8. Change yourself and your world changes. 9. Get over yourself and start giving yourself. 10. Find the benefit in every bad experience. 11. If at first you do succeed, try something harder. 12. Learn from a bad experience and make it a good experience. 13. Work on the weakness that weakens you. 14. Understand that there's not much difference between failure and success. 15. Get up and get going.